House Judiciary Committee will vote just hours from now to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt. But the Justice Department is threatening to have President Trump invoke executive privilege on everything involving the Mueller report if that vote takes place. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Chris Coons. He's a member of the Judiciary Committee. You've been in the center of all of this for some time, so we appreciate you being with us, Senator. Can I read you the letter that the DOJ sent last night? Stephen Boyd wrote this letter to the Judiciary Committee on the House side. In the face of the committee's threatened contempt vote, the Attorney General will be compelled to request that the President invoke executive privilege with respect to the materials subject to the subpoena. I hereby request that the committee hold the subpoena in abeyance and delay any vote on whether to recommend a citation of contempt for noncompliance with the subpoena pending the President's determination of this question. He basically said, you do this, game over in terms of anything Congress wants on the Mueller investigation. Do you think they have a legal case?
I don't. I don't think that it's possible to assert executive privilege over everything that Congress might be seeking to get from the executive branch. Look, one of the fundamental powers of Congress is a power of oversight, a power to investigate actions by the executive branch. It's part of our balance of powers. It's something that has been well established over many administrations of both parties. Look, there's always skirmishes at boundary line issues, famously the fight by Richard Nixon to say that he shouldn't have to give up tape recordings of discussions in the Oval Office, which led to U.S. v. Nixon. There's always been some disagreements, but this is a whole-scale effort to assert executive privilege across an entire investigation and a whole range of things. And John, this fits into a broader approach by the Trump White House to declare Congress's oversight power illegitimate. That's more of a threat to our separation of powers than any specific fight we might be having right now.
When you're talking about a threat to the separation of powers, there are those who ask the question, is that a constitutional crisis? Is it?
We keep coming up against constitutional crises here over the last 2 years. I'll put it this way. President Trump has taken a series of actions over his 2 years as president where he has genuinely pushed the boundaries across a whole range of things, criticizing sitting federal court judges, the way he talks about the media, and now the way he is challenging the power of Congress. He's done this previously in terms of spending decisions. He's done it in other ways in terms of the reach and scope of his executive orders. This is, I think, just another way in which he is genuinely pushing the boundaries of presidential power. John, what worries me is that we have 2 new Supreme Court justices and an attorney general who have publicly and repeatedly asserted a view of presidential power that I think is ahistorically overbroad, meaning they support this unitary executive theory idea that when Justice Scalia first wrote about it in a dissent was a very much a minority view. They are now in a position to potentially make it the law of the land if there were a Supreme Court decision resolving this fight.
You know, the president on Twitter, he's incorrectly interpreted the Constitution, by the way, and exactly the separation of powers, but he said he will take the notion of impeachment or investigation to the Supreme Court, leave his interpretation aside. But you seem to be suggesting is he might have his justices, the ones he appointed, on his side should these issues get to that court. Is that your view?
He might. Exactly why I voted against Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh after vigorous questioning on this was their views on executive power, which I think are significantly overbroad and, in fact, pose a threat to the ways in which our constitutional order has always worked.
Senator, if I can, I want to talk to you about what's happening with Iran this morning. I remember you talking to you before the Iran deal was signed in 2015, and you had concerns. You ultimately supported it at the end. But now, a year after the United States backed out unilaterally, Iran says it will start re-entering the nuclear realm with production of various things. What's your reaction to these moves this morning?
This is a significant moment in our many years-long effort to try and contain or hopefully stop Iran's race towards a nuclear weapon. Iran is a very dangerous, destabilizing power in the region. They export their view of terrorism and their engagement with the region in a way that is extremely harmful to our allies and our interests. And the announcement that they may well go back to enrichment and enrichment possibly to weapons grade levels is very concerning. The JCPOA, the Iran deal, is something that was cobbled together between Russia, China, our European allies, and the United States. And at its most positive, it gave us searching inspections, insight into what Iran was doing, and they committed to not develop a nuclear weapon. It was flawed in that it didn't include or cover ballistic missiles, and it didn't provide enough controls over Iran's other destabilizing actions. But on balance, I thought it was the right thing for us to do.
Some of your
and
colleagues,
unfortunately, by leaving it, and by some of the recent actions of the administration, I think the Iranians are now testing our resolve and the resolve of our allies to continue to work to contain them.
You're talking about their recent actions. Some of your colleagues,
Yes.
I've heard say, and some have as much said it to me, they think that the United States and the Trump administration is intentionally provoking Iran towards war. Do you see it like that?
Well, I'm not going to prejudge yet what the current actions are. I haven't been briefed on the intelligence that's been talked about in the press and by some senior administration officials that they say justified sending an aircraft carrier group and a wing of bombers to the region. I have no doubt that Iran is a dangerous and destabilizing force, but there are ways in which our escalating rhetoric and actions will almost certainly be met by escalation on the Iranian side. The question is this the right path towards ultimately finding some resolution with Iran? In the first year of the Trump administration, the heated rhetoric between President Trump and Kim Jong-un of North Korea was pretty stunning.
Yeah.
It has turned to negotiations. It is my hope that that's ultimately where they intend to go with this, but we don't know yet.
Very quickly, because I'm running out of time. I don't know if you had a chance to read the New York Times report about the president's taxes and the amount of money he lost over 10 years, over $1 billion, lost more money than almost anyone else in the country at that time. Does that impress you? Does that business prowess impress you, Senator?
It's pretty striking. I have to say, back during the campaign, I had a friend who was a big fan of Donald Trump saying he's such a great businessman. And I remember saying he literally ran 3 casinos into the ground. What do you know about casinos? They always make money. That he went bankrupt so spectacularly in a number of his biggest ventures does raise one question, which Jeffrey Toobin was just raising on your last roundtable. How was he bailed out? Who funded a gentleman who lost so much money across so many different undertakings? That's really the question that's worth asking at this point. Yes, it was a striking report in the New York Times.
Senator Chris Coons from Delaware, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, John.
Allison.
Okay, John, the moment the world's been waiting for. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will reveal